Okay, thanks a lot. So I will continue now doing a presentation again on Tunisia. It is a work that we have done together with Andreas, Ariane, and Annabelle, who are all also here. And it's entitled Approaching the Institutional Dimensions of Agroecological Transitions Through Soil Governance in Tunisia. And we use, in this paper, we use soil governance as a kind of illustrative case for agroecology, or sustainable land management. And even though we are, of course, aware that agroecology is much broader than only sustainable land management practices. But we do so because land degradation in the MENA region and also in Tunisia is a severe issue. It threatens agricultural productivity and ecosystems and food security. Thereby, it also increases the risks of poverty of rural population. And due to climate change, these problems will be exacerbated. And in Tunisia, the most important forms of land degradation are water erosion and wind erosion, soil contamination, soil compaction, and sealing. And drivers of these different forms of land degradation are climate change, but also poor management practices, also urbanization, and among agricultural practices, it's intensive agriculture, over extraction of water resources, and other aspects that we have heard before. And agroecology can be a way to combat land degradation. And there are actually also studies that show that in the Mediterranean, agroecological practices have improved soil organic matter and prevented control erosion. And these practices are, for example, agroforestry, the use of cover crops, no pesticides, or reduced tillage or terracing. And also in a broader sense, I think we have already heard today that agroecology can kind of address this vicious cycle of threatened ecosystems, poverty, and so on. And agroecology in Tunisia, as far as we have seen it, is if it comes to agroecology as a movement, it's somehow limited. Nonetheless, many traditional farming practices do align with principles of agroecology, even though they are often not framed as agroecology. But nevertheless, they are applied in some, or used in some cases. And recently, we can see that there are soil governance strategies that aim to strengthen agroecology, and where agroecology is kind of a central pillar of these strategies. And I mean, we have also discussed this question already before today, whether institutions and governance can, they can hinder as well as support transformations towards agroecology. And this leads me to our research question. So we wonder how the Tunisian soil governance system relate to institutional dimensions that are actually considered conducive to agroecological transitions. And we build actually, so what I'm presenting here also kind of builds on what we have heard in the morning by Ariane and Andreas. So we connect literature on agroecology and on polycentric governance. And therefore, with this paper, we want to derive institutions and governance-related aspects that are in polycentric governance literature, but also agroecology literature, are considered conducive to agroecological transitions. And then in a second step, we want to understand how farmers and public actors relate to these institutional dimensions that we found important from a normative perspective. We have also speaking about this today, about political agroecology. So here the aim of political agroecology, I think, is really to understand the historical, economic, and social context in which power relations are embedded, which kind of give rise to the current agroecosystem that we find. And the aim, therefore, of political agroecology is to design institutions that facilitate change. And, for example, that can move the power from the elite towards food producers and change the way food is produced and also distributed. Political agroecology takes a multi-level governance approach, where the focus is on the farm level, the household level, community level, up to the international level. But still, it is the territorial scale that we have also, I think by Paulina, we have already speaking also about the role of the territory. So this is really considered the key scale for agroecological transitions. And also there in the book Agroecology Now by Anderson et al., there are different dimensions of or domains of transformations that are considered important, like right and access to nature, like water, land, seeds, and so on, knowledge and culture, systems of economic exchange, and so on. And we now build on these different domains of transformation and come up, I think we have partly already heard these different dimensions that from a polycentric governance perspective is considered important. We have already speaking about these different dimensions, so I will be brief on that. For example, we wonder whether agroecological practices among farmers are present in our case studies, whether, for example, different types of values exist about what kind of farm practices are considered valuable, whether then we wonder also whether data is available on performance of the farming sector, because we think that information is crucial to also change behavior or to see the importance of changing behavior. Then I think very importantly, secure property and tenure rights of land, of water, of seeds. We have heard this already today. Then it's also about independence or autonomy of local actors to make, I mean, first of public actors also within the different governance levels, so whether they can make autonomous decisions from the central state, but also with regards to farmers, whether they can kind of act autonomously and self-organize with regards to the way they want to do farming and the way they want to also commercialize food. Then it's about, then we also wonder whether cooperative behavior of farmers is promoted by the government, and whether farmers have actually the right to voice concern regarding farming. So now I come to the research design that we used here. We have did a multi-level analysis with 3 local case studies. We have we collected data at the national level, at the regional level, and at the case study level. We actually used the same regions that Ayman already talked about, Kef, Siliana, and Kairouan. And then we also did secondary data collection, and we did stakeholder workshops for data validation. And I have to say here that because of the pandemic, our Tunisian colleagues did the interviews, and we just went there for data validation. And here you see how we analyzed the data through content analysis and social network analysis. The different case study regions, Siliana, Kef, and Kairouan, I'm going to be quick on that. I just show you here the slide because we have already heard also the challenges of and the types of farming that are present in these 3 regions. And now I want to talk briefly about the kind of policy framework that we find. So first, there was a shift from food self-sufficiency to really trade-based food security, where the idea was that if enough income is there to kind of import food, this will lead to food security. And therefore, there were many subsidies, or still are many subsidies for investments in irrigation, and really large-scale export-oriented agriculture was supported. But recently, as I've said before, there's the focus on also more nature conservation in policies. We find, and in the strategy for the development and conservation of agricultural land, there are farming practices that are in line with agroecology are supported, like crop rotation, agroforestry, or reduced tillage. And the idea is to involve farmers more strongly in decision making and also to undertake capacity building measures with regards to agroecology. Now I come to what we find in our 3 case studies on the ground. So actually we found that agroecological practices are limited among farmers. So even though they have been like, there's the traditional knowledge still, like for example, water harvesting, it's not really applied anymore by farmers. Then I think also Ayman mentioned this challenge already. There's limited information actually about land degradation. For us, it was even difficult to find information also for public actors. And then, I mean, we can imagine how it must be for farmers to kind of access this knowledge apart from what they already, of course, know about where they are living. Then a really severe issue is that property rights are not really secure. There's a huge inequality of really large-scale farming in contrast to small-scale farmers who have no secure rights to access land, but also no rights really to have water for irrigation. And this so there's land fragmentation in very small parcels, and the problem here is that it makes, for example, collective action more difficult because many farmers really have to come together if they want to apply, for example, or implement terraces like as a sustainable land management practice. And also some farming practices are restricted because of these really small parcels. And also application for subsidies is hindered because they need these formal land titles. Then we find, I mean, Tunisia was is a really centralized country. And after the revolution, there was the intent to decentralize. And there was this local authority code, which was adopted. But and where the idea was to give more power to the municipalities, but in the end, implementation is kind of there are really problems of implementation. We see that the local authorities, they don't have fiscal autonomy, so they cannot raise taxes. They don't have enough funds, and also responsibilities are not really clear with regards to agriculture. So many aspects are defined in this local authority code, but not with regards to agriculture, even though these are all rural municipalities. So it's kind of a very important area. And then I think we have heard this before, there's this strong dependence on external funds of international organizations. Which of course also limits autonomy of local and public actors. And the same we found actually that for farmers, autonomous decision making is restricted. They have difficulties in accessing seeds other than cereals, and also the commercialization is challenged because they live very far away from markets where they could also sell produces derived from sustainable land management practices. So there's not really a market where they could sell their produces. So in the end, it's really farmers are kind of there's knowledge and also abilities to self-organize and to apply agroecological practices is restricted because of different reasons. I mean, maybe just to focus on also due to lack of financial resources, farmers would very understandably rather focus on the short-term benefit rather on the long-term benefit, and agroecological practices usually their benefit only kind of unfolds after a long period. So this is also a problem. So let me come to the conclusion. We think that the approach of combining polycentric governance literature and agroecology literature is fruitful because it allows to kind of operationalize and more specifically these different domains of transformation. And but we found that there's really a gap between what kind of from a normative perspective would be desired and what the reality is on the ground. So the policy framework that exists really hinders or constrains farmers' decision making and the adoption of more sustainable practices. And also autonomy of regional and local actors is restricted due to the very centralized system. And therefore, we think that the transformation of the food system under the current political, economic, and institutional context is rather unlikely. And yeah, thanks for your attention.